Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtada Khan, your host. And today, as usual, this is Sunday night, and I'm here with Geopolitics this week. For those of you who follow Hindi, I did a Geopolitics this week in Hindi. It's already up you can find it in the live section of the channel. But this is going to be in English, and I hope to cover a few topics. The topics that I'm going to cover, as you can see from the thumbnail, I'm going to talk about Trump's warning to NATO. I'm going to talk about the Doha Summit, what is happening with the U.S.-Qatari relations, the U.S.-Qatar-Israel triangle, and what does this mean to U.S. policy in the Middle East. I will also talk about Indian-American business, especially here, close to home, near New Jersey, as to what they are expecting, the crisis that they are facing as a result of the Donald Trump's tariffs. The 50% have now kicked in. It's nearly 2 weeks that those tariffs have been, and what its impact is on Indian American businesses here in the US. And finally, I do want to add something which is not on the thumbnail, but since I designed the thumbnail, I have been reading about it, is the coming chaos when Donald Trump decides to go after after pharmaceuticals which are imported into the US. Right now, India has a $10 billion export business with the US. China is a major exporter to the US. China is not just exporting medicines, but it also exports ingredients that make medicines. They are called APIs, and a lot of those also go to India. So a lot of pharmacy items that India is exporting also come from China. And then we will talk going forward about what the US is trying to do with China and broadly with the pharmacy industry. A lot of people here are very worried that it could create a health crisis here in the United States. So we will talk about all of those issues as we go forward. As usual, I'll try to wrap up in 15-20 minutes, and then I will take your questions, your comments, and try to address them to the best of my ability. And as usual, I will give priority to members. And I can see that already some members are joining in. So thank you for joining Conversations. So Donald Trump has written a letter to NATO countries, basically telling them that they need to ramp up basically they need to stop buying Russian oil, number one. And number two, he wants them to impose 50 or 100% tariffs on China for buying oil from Russia. And he says that if Europe is serious about ending this war on Ukraine, then they need to take these steps, and he will match those steps. And if Europe is unwilling to stop buying gas and petroleum, etc., especially Slovakia and Hungary continue to depend entirely on Russian energy. And so if Europe stops buying Russian energy, then going forward, Donald Trump will also not impose any more additional tariffs either on China or any other country for continuing to engage with the Russian economy. It's basically, he is telling the Europeans that stop asking America to do everything, do your share. And the question then is, if the Europeans fail to impose those tariffs on China, I don't think they're going to do that. First of all, I don't think that Hungary and Slovakia will vote to stop buying Russian oil and natural gas entirely. They depend on it. Plus, in many ways, those two countries are kind of pro-Russia themselves. So European Union is not going to get a consensus vote on this issue. The second thing that is going to happen is many European countries are currently negotiating deals with China, and they are not going to get into a trade war with China. They depend heavily on China. China could really squeeze them with rare earth minerals, with magnets. China could impose tariffs on some of the stuff that they are, like, for example, if China simply bans wine and whiskey from France. France is going through tremendous political turmoil at the moment, and that could become a total disaster if they start losing 60,000 new jobs because they can't export some of their key products, some highly profitable products, to China. So I'm not sure whether NATO countries and European countries will be able to comply with Donald Trump. And I think he realizes that they cannot do what he is demanding. And as a result of that, it is quite possible that there will be no sanctions additionally on China, or for that matter in Russia. And that's Trump's way of getting away by looking tough without actually being tough with regards to NATO. But you must also recall that this week, Donald Trump essentially, while saying nice things about India and Prime Minister Modi, and also saying that we are on the verge of basically getting a good deal, a good trade agreement between India and the US, he says we are just nearly there. He's going to call Prime Minister Modi, and Piyush Goyal himself has said that it will be done by November. And already Sergio Gore, the Donald Trump's appointee as ambassador to India, has already hinted that perhaps Donald Trump will go to India in November for the Quad Summit, thereby reviving the Quad and significantly rebuilding India-US relations. So if he goes to India and they sign a bilateral trade agreement there, it will be indeed a very big deal. It will be a bigger deal than anything that Joe Biden and Modi have done in the past. So we will see what happens on that front. But will that include Donald Trump removing the 25% tariffs that he has imposed as penalty on India for buying Russian oil, without India stopping to buy Russian oil? If India continues to buy Russian oil and the war continues, will Donald Trump still go to India in November? Will he be welcome? That is the question. Because he's not going to go below 10% on the reciprocal tariff. So it's going to be around 15% on India. And so 15% and 25%, which means that the best thing that can happen while the Russia-related tariffs are on is the deal moving from 50 to 40%. And that's not going to help India at all. It needs to go below 20%. Then it's a good deal for India. Otherwise, it's not. So anyway, we will see what happens with that. There was a march or a protest, you could say, or a demonstration organized by Tim Robinson, an extreme right activist, anti-immigrant activist in London. It was a huge protest. People didn't expect so many people to show up. According to the London police, it was about 110 to 150,000 people. You can see the videos of that demonstration in London. There have been series of anti-immigrant protests this week alone. I mean, this is not just in London. There was a massive protest in Australia. The protest in Australia explicitly targeted Indians, because Indians are the largest migrants after British migrants in UK. But they are soon in Australia, but they are soon going to overtake the total number of British immigrants to Australia. And in the last 5 years, the migration has basically been from India, and it seems that's how it's going to be going forward in the next 5 years. So most of the protests in Australia were anti-India. In the US too, there has been a lot of chatter against India about H-1B visas, about student visas, etc. But the protests and demonstrations in London were primarily targeted at Muslims and at Islam. And they were basically, slogans were mostly directed against Islam and Muslims, saying Islam has no place in Europe, Islam has no place in England. And ironically, it is just this week, while Tim Robinson is leading a massive protest against immigrants, that the ruling party appoints Shabana Mahmood, a Muslim woman, I think of Pakistani descent or Kashmiri descent, as the Home Secretary or Home Minister. She's the new Amit Shah of United Kingdom. So suddenly you find that London's mayor is Sadiq Khan, also of the same pedigree, another Muslim, and then you now have Home Minister of UK, who is Shabana Mahmood, another Muslim woman who has been a very vocal advocate of Muslim rights in London. There were counter protests, but they were not that big. They were very small, and there was some violence also. Tim Robinson actually went out. A few days ago, there was a rape of an Indian Sikh woman. She was raped by two white guys. And there's tremendous outcry among the immigrant community. And this is because of the hatred that people like Tim Robinson and his groups and right-wing groups all over the West these days, who are generating hate towards immigrants. And that is eventually translating into attacks and violence. So this Sikh woman was raped by two white men, and Tim Robinson went out and said, "Oh, this is not good." Basically, he said, "Don't rape Indians and Sikhs." And so basically, he's telling the immigrants to keep their anger and their violence directed at Muslims. And it was interesting to see that some American ideologues also participated. Elon Musk gave a speech in which he says that we must fight back or we will die. Basically, Elon Musk is worried that the white civilization in the world is going to become extinct. There is an existential crisis in Europe as the birth rates of white people has crashed below 1. It has to be 2.1 in order for there to be replacement rate for. So the fertility rate, which means every woman should have 2.1 children, right? So basically what you're saying is that 5 women should, or rather 10 women should have 11 children, then the population will remain the same steadily. But the fertility rate is below 0.8 in most European countries. And so the population is declining. It's a welfare state. They need new workers. They need younger workers. Life expectancy is increasing. So there are more and more older people who are retired. The retirement age is very low in Europe. They work very few hours. So productivity is a bit lower than, say, the US in Europe. And so they need migrants to come and work and feed the welfare state and take care of the old and the others who are on welfare, the free healthcare, free education, and a lot of freebies that European states provide. They need workers for that, and those workers are coming from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. So this anti-immigration sentiment is kind of counterproductive for these countries too. So we will see what happens. It is just the right-wing leadership is manipulating this. And you saw that in the US elections too, where immigration was a big issue. So at least in UK, it was not directly targeting Indians, but it was targeting Muslims. And if you're an Indian Muslim, you will be targeted. But you must keep that in mind, that nobody walks around with a stamp on their forehead saying that I am from India, don't kill me. I'm from India, don't rape me, rape the one next to me, she's from Pakistan, or something like that. So we will see what happens with this anger. Ultimately, it's going to result in basically Nigel Farage's party coming to power, I think. Plus, I agree with the right wing. The Starmer party is absolutely useless. Starmer, as the Prime Minister of UK, is just useless chap. So I can understand why bad policy is making them angry, and they are making immigrants as a scapegoat. There's a lot of investments in UK that comes from Muslim countries in the Middle East. And so this hatred towards Muslims is ultimately going to backfire if suddenly you find that Arabs start withdrawing their money from London because of anti-Muslim hatred. So property prices will just crash in London. But you must also remember that this is not going to stop with Muslims. It is going to be against everybody, especially Indians, because Indians are the biggest visa overstayers. People who overstay their visas in England the most are Indians, then Chinese after that. So the Pakistani community and the Arab and Muslim communities are very, very low when it comes to staying over there as visa overstay. And while there were a lot of illegal migration because of Germany bringing in a lot of Syrians, the donkeys from India and Punjab and Haryana and Gujarat are just as prolific as from any other part. So the anti-illegal immigration crusade is going to include India. So we'll see how that goes, especially in the bilateral trade agreement that India signed with UK. And it allows a lot of Indians to go and work in England. And if they overstay, you will see ultimately, because Nigel Farage, when that deal came out, the bilateral agreement, Nigel Farage was the first to attack it. And they were constantly pointing to the unlimited migration from India to UK as a result of the bilateral trade agreement that India signed with UK, as a result of which literally hundreds of thousands of Indians can go there, cooks, musicians, uh, and IT people primarily can go there and not pay taxes on top of that, especially healthcare taxes. So it's going to be a mess going forward. I think the world is becoming anti-immigrant everywhere. In India, there is a lot of rhetoric against so-called Bangladeshi infiltrators. There is also all those kind of things. In the US itself, there is a claim that there are 700,000 illegal Indians who have come to America. But you must keep in mind that the guy who is supposed to enforce all these laws is also Indian, Kash Patel. And in the UK, the person who is in charge of all of this is the Home Minister, and she's of Pakistani origin. So there are two sides to the Western story. Not everybody is anti-immigrant. Most of the country, more than half of the country, recognizes the vitality, the wealth, the ideas, the energy that immigrants bring to these societies. There's a lot of hate being spread, and a lot of hate against Muslims in UK is actually coming from Indians, especially in India, who are not even in UK, through social media. And I can tell you that that's going to backfire, because once you start generating hatred towards brown people, that's how they see people, as brown people, then they're not going to distinguish between a Bangladeshi, Pakistani, an Indian, Sikh, or a Muslim, and so on and so forth. In fact, many Westerners can't even distinguish between a Sikh and a Muslim. They look at the turbans and they look at the beards and they think they're all the same people. So the second issue that I wanted to talk about is the rise of anger towards immigrants, and there seems to be no end to it. It's completely destroying liberal values in all Western countries, and First Amendment rights don't seem to exist anymore if you are not a native born or white person in the Western countries these days. The third issue that I wanted to talk about is the Doha Summit. So there is a Doha Summit taking place right now. It started today. And it's basically GCC countries. Egypt is there, Iran is there, Pakistan is there, Malaysia is also participating in this. The idea is to express these countries are there to provide a moral support to Qatar, which was attacked by Israel. And there are some very serious questions that they are trying to raise. One question is, what is the benefit of having, what is the benefit of having positive relations with the US? What is the meaning of US security guarantees? Can you trust the United States? Because the US did nothing to protect Qatar. The US has a security agreement with Qatar to protect it. There is a US base in Qatar with 10,000 American troops, their Al Udeid base, and they did nothing. So why would the Qataris have spent over $8 billion in subsidizing that military base that the US has in Qatar, in the hope that they would protect Qatar and provide Qatar with a security umbrella? And now it's very clear that the Americans have basically stabbed them in the back. Donald Trump says he gave them a warning, but the Prime Minister of Qatar basically called him a liar by saying, no, the warning came even as the attack was going on. It's too late for them to do anything. So as a result of that, the Arab and Muslim countries are getting together in Qatar. I don't think they can do anything at all. They will just come up with some silly statement, broadly speaking. But they may eventually start moving away from reliance on the United States as more and more people in the world. The question really is, how are Taiwan and Ukraine looking at what happened to Qatar? Does Ukrainians think, oh, no, we are Christians, we are white, so the US commitment to our security is more solid than US security commitments to the Qataris, even though the Qataris promise to invest $1.2 trillion in the US economy. The Qataris gave a $500 billion jet as a gift to Donald Trump, and they got nothing from him for this. I mean, they are stupid if they did all that and they got nothing, and they continue to do that. The Qataris hosted Hamas at the request of the US from 2012 onwards. At the request of the US and the Israelis, the Qataris provided funds for Hamas in Gaza to keep Gaza alive so that Netanyahu can continue to say that Palestinians are divided and we have no partner in Palestine. Because as long as Hamas existed in Gaza, there was a disagreement between West Bank and Gaza. And so the Israelis were saying, who should we negotiate with? With the Palestinian Authority or with Hamas? Even if you make a deal with the Palestinian Authority, Hamas will not accept it. So basically, that is where, that was a great advantage for Israel, and it continued to build settlements in the West Bank while there was no deal. And Hamas was sustained by a lot of money that came from Qatar, and this was coming at the behest of the United States and the Israelis. Israel could have simply stopped that money from going into Gaza, as it controls everything. So the Qataris kind of feel like, oh shit, we have been used and abused by US and Israel. And so that is a very serious situation in the Middle East. We will see what comes out. I have zero expectations of anything meaningful coming out of the Doha Summit. But what I can tell you is that this illusion that America is going to protect the Arabs has been shattered, I hope, entirely. And this whole becoming the movement towards Abrahamic Accords, signing all of these deals that UAE was pushing, has benefited them in a zero way. So now I want to move to my second last topic, where I want to talk about. There have been interesting articles, one in the Wall Street Journal today, and another, I think, in CBC, which talks about how Donald Trump's tariffs are impacting Indian American businesses. So about 100 miles north of my house, there is a town called Edison in New Jersey. It's like a little India. There are 200 Indian American businesses, restaurants, grocery stores, jewelry stores. So if you're getting married here in the US, you want a sherwani, you want dresses, you want necklaces, you go to Edison, you'll get anything and everything you want. You can even rent an elephant there. You can get a jula, a swing, for whatever you want. Furniture, everything is imported from India, from papad to jewelry. There are about 200 Indian businesses in Edison, and there's very few such places. There's one in Jackson Heights in New York. There's one in Devon in Chicago. Apparently, there's a couple of such places in Dallas, now in Texas, where there's a concentration of Indian businesses. So you go there, you get everything. You can eat Indian breakfast, you can walk around, you can do shopping, you can have Indian lunch, Indian dinner, etc. So this article was primarily focused on discussion to Indian businesses in Edison, New Jersey, and there are 200 of them, and they feel that at least 50 of them will close immediately or pretty soon because they're not able to place any orders. For example, they interviewed a jeweler, and the jeweler says that with 50% increase in pricing, and apparently they operate on very thin margins. So the importer here in the US is unable to absorb those tariffs. And even if he does, he can't absorb 50% of the tariffs. So if you're buying a necklace for $10,000, now you will pay $15,000 for the same necklace. And neither the exporter from India nor the importer here in the US can simply absorb $5,000 and still sell you the necklace for $10,000. So they will have to extend that to, and if you are from India, if you're getting married, you will think, why should I pay $5,000 extra to this? I can simply fly to India in $1,500, and in $2,000 I can spend a week in India, staying with my family, visit them, and do the shopping in India and bring them back. They don't have to pay any tariffs if they bring back. That is probably what a lot of Indians are going to do. They're going to stop shopping here. That is on expensive items that I'm talking about, jewelry, etc. Because one of the biggest export items from India to the US is jewelry. But other items also, I think food stuff, etc. We have an assortment of pickles in our house. Maybe there'll be lesser number of bottles or lesser range of pickles. We'll stick to maybe mango pickles and mixed vegetable pickles and limbu pickle. That's all. So I think they are very worried that if this 50% tariff remains for long, a lot of Indian businesses are going to simply have to shut down and think of something else. And that would be very, very sad because These are Americans. These are not. This is not affecting Indian economy. This is affecting American economy. Indian Americans here are going to pay a big price for these tariffs at this rate, at least. And these are small businesses. These are not necessarily large businesses. And if the grocery, so there are basically three, four kind of things that you get there. You get groceries, you get jewelry, you get clothes. Those are the three things why you go to Edison. And then when you're there, you have all this food, and then you even can get a haircut there, etc. But if you're not going there to buy the stuff, then the other people who are providing services, they will also go out of business because they will not have customers. So it's going to be a difficult time. We will see how it goes. I'm going to keep an eye on Edison. And I was even thinking that maybe I should drive up there and talk to some of the people there. But I mean, getting 3 or 4 interviews, I'm not a reporter. They are all anecdotal. I'm more interested in looking at the total data once the tariffs kick in, and to see how that really works. Finally, there's an interesting discussion going on saying that there's a tension going on on the pharmacy business. So there are some billionaires who have invested in American biotech companies. They're all startups, and they're trying to come up with ideas. But because they are operating in the United States, their research and the products that they are generating are more expensive than what's happening in China. So many large pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer have gone to China and bought a lot of the new medicines that the Chinese biotech companies are generating. So they have bought medicines that cure cancer, medicines that cure other diseases, etc. So now Donald Trump wants to basically put an end to that. He's going to put huge tariffs, or he's going to block medicines coming from China into the United States. He's worried that China might go ahead of the US in biotechnology. The assumption is that the US continues to lead the world in biotechnology, but China is catching up very closely. So there is essentially a civil war going on between Trump supporters, between billionaires who have invested in domestic biotech companies, startups, and they want them to be successful. And the way they can be successful is by shielding them from competition from Chinese biotech companies. And the others, the big pharmaceutical companies, and I'm not talking about venture capitalists or businesses, the pharmaceutical companies, they are buying basically Chinese biotech companies. And there's also some more complications about testing. The first round of testing is done in China to show that the medicines are working, and then the second round is done before the FDA approves them here in the US. But for American companies, both tests are done in the US, so even testing is more expensive for American biotech companies than they are for Chinese. So there's a fight going on. We will see if Donald Trump stops Chinese medicines coming here or impose places like 100% tariffs. There's going to be an indirect impact on India too. And we will see how that goes. Because as I said, a large percentage of components which go into making medicines come from China. That's why there is this, the opioid crisis, all these drugs that are made, even their chemical components come from China, and the US has been trying to put an end to that. So we will see what happens. This is a new development, and it's suddenly come out in public. New York Times actually has a draft executive order of Donald Trump, which will basically block Chinese pharmaceutical stuff. And some people might think it is going to benefit India, but I don't know if it is, because it is quite possible he might just say, look, if the goal of blocking Chinese medicine is to encourage American domestic biotech companies, then why should we allow medicines to come from Russia, or for that matter, India? So I think if Donald Trump pulls the trigger on this, he will include India as well. At least that's my assessment for now. We will see what happens going forward. It is quite possible that the pharmaceutical companies might win the domestic civil war on this issue, and Donald Trump will basically not impose any additional tariffs on or block Chinese biotech research from coming into the US. We'll see what happens because it also depends on how the US-China bilateral trade agreement comes about, and they have put a pause on Chinese tariffs for 3 months, so they have a 3-month to negotiate this deal, and I'm sure the pharmacy issue is also on top of that. China does have a lot of leverage against the US. As I was saying yesterday, the Chinese have simply reduced to zero their purchasing of soybeans in the United States from the US, and that's putting a lot of pressure on soybean farmers. They could all go out of business very soon. And there are 500,000 of them, and most of them are Donald Trump voters. So it is quite possible that China has more than one negotiating card, the magnets, the rare earth materials, and also the agricultural products that it buys from the US. So we will see how things go going forward. There's another new development with that, where Mexico is now trying to impose tariffs on 50% tariffs on electric vehicles, which is going to hurt BYD from China and Tesla also. So there is a lot of tariff wars are now beginning to spring out all over. It's not just Donald Trump who is now creating a mess in the global economy by imposing tariffs. Other countries are following suit, and Mexico has now joined it in trying to protect its own automobile industry from cheap Chinese electric vehicles, which are basically beginning to dominate the Mexican market. And one last point before I turn towards your questions and comments is that apparently this week Mexico became the biggest car exporter to Canada, overtaking the US. And that is an interesting development. I wonder if the White House has taken notice of that. So anyway, so that is the end of my monologue. And oh, that's good. I managed to finish it in 17 minutes. And I'll now read your comments and see if there are any questions. Hitesh, you were the first to come. Namaste to you. You know, I didn't like the fact that India even played the match. It's okay. First of all, Pakistani cricket team has become a second-rate cricket team. So watching India-Pakistan is not fun anymore. I would have predicted easily that India is going to beat Pakistan easily, which they did. They beat them very easily. They finished them off. They were all out for, I think, less than 130. And I didn't see the match. I just saw the scorecard, and then India finished it off in 15, 16 overs. So it was not even a contest, really. I think the only team which might give India a fight is the Sri Lankans, and maybe the Afghans can surprise depending on who India plays in the semi-final. The other group is actually more competitive with Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and Sri Lanka, with only Hong Kong as a weak team. In this group, you have Oman and UAE, which are really weak teams. But it was to me quite surprising the hypocrisy of the Modi government, which says blood and water cannot mix when the discussion about blocking water going into Pakistan. But then the question is, how can cricket and blood mix? How can you do this? This is such a hypocritical turnaround. And nobody's asking this of the government, neither the Minister of Sports nor BJP leaders. Nobody's even asking Gautam Gambhir, who used to be an MP in the Bharatiya Janata Party, as to the U-turn. Is this because of Amit Shah and his son? To me, that was extremely hypocritical. If you can play cricket with Pakistan, then you can trade with Pakistan too, because playing cricket is a money-making thing. This is a international trade deal, what India and Pakistan have done in Dubai. So that's my comment on this. Hemant, that is not the case at all. You're being very nice to Tim Robinson. You will see what is going to happen. If people like Tim Robinson come to power, he's going to go after. There is no anti-terrorists. Okay, they didn't rape that Sikh woman because she was a terrorist. They raped her because she was a brown woman. And if you're using the word terrorist as a surrogate to Muslims, then shame on you. So this whole talk is, oh, we are only against terrorists. What do you mean? Why are you against terrorists? How can terrorists become mayors of your country? And how can they be home ministers? Like, who is the terrorist? And why are the terrorists free? So that's a very serious question to ask. This whole idea that, oh, I'm only against terrorists. Like, who is not against terrorists? Tell me. Only right-wing extremists like Tim Robinson are against terrorists, and everybody else is for terrorism. So this is an idiotic explanation to go. This is a racist right-wing movement which is going to go after all immigrants. Just watch my words, and then you'll get a big surprise. Just as Modi got a big surprise when Donald Trump turned on India, all this rubbish about Abke Baad, Trump Sarkar, Modi's, and Trump has this great relationship. All of that went down the drain, and that's what's going to happen there in UK. Also, not just in UK, it's going to happen everywhere. An Indian immigrant's head was cut off in Texas very recently, and it was by another illegal immigrant and he was hiring illegal immigrants. There was no sympathy for him because he hired illegal immigrants from Mexico to work for him. So I don't buy this rubbish. Those right-wing movements are racist. They are not going to object to white Ukrainian immigration, which has upset, like in Canada, the biggest problem was created on housing and services is because of the large number of Ukrainians who came into Canada. And the same in UK, because they're taking free services of the state, they're putting a burden, but not a word about Ukrainian refugees or immigrants to UK. It is a racist movement. They're worried that white people are going to lose power. And you will see that going forward. Samir, so what's your opinion about India-US trade deal possibility? That's an interesting question. Like I just said, there's a lot of chatter here in the US from both Donald Trump as well as Sergio Gore, the presidential nominee or ambassador, who I think is going to be approved because he just finished his confirmation hearings. So they are both saying that they are very close to the deal. I don't know how they can be close to the deal. Who has changed their position? Either India has made some concessions or Donald Trump has withdrawn some demands. So it's not very clear to us what those concessions are and what the changes are. The reason why there was no deal is because India was refusing to open its agricultural and dairy products. India was refusing to reduce tariffs on many manufacturing stuff like cars, etc., that the US exports, and India was not willing to change the laws on intellectual property rights. And India was not willing to open up its service industries also. There are lots and lots of non-trade barriers. So what has changed? Is Donald Trump now saying, okay, don't give us change, do not reduce this or that? Or is India reducing something? That's not very clear to us. The second thing is they also hinted that Donald Trump is going to come to India in November for the Quad Summit because Donald Trump supports the Quad. And I'm assuming that is when, if there's a deal, it will be signed in November. So we will see what happens going forward. I think the best thing that can happen to India is a significant progress on the Russia-Ukraine peace negotiations to such an extent that Donald Trump feels that, okay, now I can lift the 25% tariffs on India, the additional tariffs. Let's say that the war is going on, India is still buying Russian oil, and Trump keeps the 25% tariffs in place. But they have a deal on trade. And so Trump reduces the tariffs on India from 25 to 15. So what? 25 plus 15 is 40%. So the tariffs will still be 40%. So India moving from 50 to 40% is no big deal at all. It is worse than Vietnam, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Pakistan has 19, Bangladesh has 20, Vietnam has 20. So it has to be that two things has to happen for it to be a good deal for India. Number one, the Russia-related penalties of 25% has to become zero. And the 25% deal that Donald Trump imposed as reciprocal tariffs should go down. Best would be to 10, like UK, but that I don't think India is going to get a better deal than EU, especially if India does not want to invest in the US, like European Union promised to invest $600 billion and buy some $750 billion of US energy. So India probably will get 15 or maybe even 20. That's the best thing that can happen. But for it to be a meaningful deal, the 25% on the Russian thing has to go. Otherwise, it's not worthwhile, I think. Even to get from 50 to 40 is pointless. Who is Zeba Bakhtiar? I don't know, Repas. Who is Zeba Bakhtiar? At least give me some idea of who she is, because sometimes I don't remember the name. Maybe I would know something else. Okay, so good morning. Okay, GM Khan Saab. Pravan Prakash, good morning to you too. Pavan Prakash. I didn't know. At least the matches would have been good. It was good fun, watching Zahir Abbas and Imran Khan play, Javed Mialat. I saw them play in Hyderabad in the Fateh Maidan Stadium, and that was a long time ago in the 1980s. Yeah, the 1980s and 1990s were I think the heydays of Indo-Pakistan rivalry. But Pakistan's cricket has declined, like all of Pakistan's sports. Even the squash, they have declined. Hockey, they have declined, etc. And then, yes, the world is going to dogs, literally. There is a lot of tension, and I agree with you that there is a lot of divisions and hatred being spewed. You can see what has happened with the assassination or killing of Charlie Kirk here in the US. There's so much of hatred being poured from all directions. It's unbelievable. So anyway, so we are coming close to half an hour. So thank you very much for watching Conversations. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share it with your socio-political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtada Khan. Take care.